When we hear the word mindset, we often imagine something permanent, something fixed inside our heads. But the truth is, mindset is like a muscle. It doesn't grow because we simply wish it would. It grows because we train it, stretch it, and push it beyond comfort. And just like the body responds to consistent exercise, the mind responds to consistent practice. Imagine giving yourself 30 days, not 30 years, not even 3 years, just 30 days to challenge the way you think, act, and respond to the world. What could happen if you treated your mindset like your most valuable asset for one whole month? That's the opportunity in front of you. The first thing to realize is this: a winning mindset isn't about winning against others. It's about winning against yesterday's version of yourself. Every day becomes a test. Will you choose comfort or will you choose growth? That one decision, repeated daily, builds a foundation stronger than any outside motivation. Let's be clear, though, change doesn't happen by accident. It demands discipline and intentionality. Think of it as designing your own mental training program. You set a vision for what kind of person you want to be at the end of 30 days, and then you break it down into small, daily practices that align with that vision. For example, you start by identifying the negative beliefs holding you back. Write them down, call them out, and every day, replace them with affirmations and actions that prove the opposite. If you believe you're not disciplined, then commit to one small disciplined act each day, whether it's waking up 15 minutes earlier or finishing a task before scrolling your phone. Over time, those micro actions rewire your sense of identity. A winning mindset also demands resilience. Setbacks will come because life doesn't pause just because you're trying to improve. The difference is how you respond to them. Do you see failure as a wall, or do you see it as a stepping stone? Within 30 days, you can train yourself to pause, reflect, and extract lessons from every challenge instead of letting challenges dictate your worth. And here's the most powerful part: consistency compounds. By the end of 30 days, the daily habits you practiced will stop feeling like effort and start feeling like who you are. You'll no longer need to ask, how do I think like a winner? Because your actions will have already answered that question. 30 days may not sound like much, but in the grand scheme of your life, it's enough to alter your trajectory. A winning mindset doesn't require perfection, it requires persistence. And that persistence, exercised day after day, transforms not only how you think, but also how you live. 5 keynotes of the speech: a winning mindset is built through daily training, not wishful thinking. Growth comes from competing with yesterday's version of yourself, not with others. Small, disciplined actions performed consistently rewire beliefs and identity. Resilience comes from viewing setbacks as stepping stones, not barriers. Consistency over 30 days transforms temporary effort into lasting character. A winning mindset is built through daily training, not wishful thinking. This single idea holds the power to change the trajectory of a person's life, yet most people overlook it. Too often, we fall into the trap of believing that success or confidence is something we stumble upon, as though one morning we will wake up and suddenly possess the clarity, strength, and drive we've always wanted. But the reality is that the mind, much like the body, requires deliberate training to achieve its potential. If you want stronger muscles, you lift weights. If you want sharper focus, deeper resilience, and an attitude that wins regardless of circumstances, you must train your thoughts, your habits, and your behaviors every single day. Think about how professional athletes operate. They don't rely on talent alone. Talent might get them started, but without consistent practice, talent fades. The same rule applies to mindset. Some people may seem naturally optimistic or disciplined, but behind that appearance is usually a lifetime of repetition and reinforcement. They didn't simply wish for it, they worked for it. This is where many of us go wrong. We wish for confidence, we hope for discipline, we pray for resilience, but we fail to show up for the daily mental repetitions that make those qualities real. A winning mindset is not about luck, genetics, or chance. It is the byproduct of consistent, intentional training. Daily training of the mind doesn't have to be complex. In fact, it's the simplest practices done repeatedly that create the strongest foundation. Take the act of beginning each day with gratitude. Writing down 3 things you are thankful for may feel small, even insignificant. But what you are actually doing is training your mind to scan the world for positivity rather than negativity. Over weeks and months, your default perception shifts. Where others see obstacles, you start noticing opportunities. That is the effect of daily training. Similarly, when you choose to do one difficult task each day, instead of procrastinating, you are not only completing the task itself, you are conditioning your mind to embrace discomfort rather than run from it. Over time, this repeated behavior rewires your brain to associate challenge with growth instead of pain. Without realizing it, you begin to crave progress more than you fear failure. That shift doesn't happen in a single day, nor does it come from wishful thinking. It comes from training every single day without exception. Another important dimension of daily training is self-talk. The words you say to yourself shape the reality you live in. Most people are unaware of how often they speak negatively about themselves, using phrases like, "I'm not good at this," or "I can't handle this." The brain listens, absorbs, and reinforces those statements. To build a winning mindset, you must intervene in this cycle. Each day, you train yourself to replace limiting language with empowering language. Instead of "I can't," you practice saying, "I'm learning." Instead of "this is impossible," you practice saying, "this is a challenge I can grow from." At first, it feels forced, But that's how training works. It feels unnatural in the beginning. The repetition, however, makes it second nature. Consistency is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Training the mind once in a while does very little. It's like in a gym once a month and expecting visible muscles. The gains come from steady repetition. One day of discipline doesn't change your identity, but 30 consecutive days of discipline begins to convince you that you are a disciplined person. That identity shift is the essence of a winning mindset. It's no longer something you are trying to achieve. It's something you become through practice. The beauty of daily training is that it compounds. At first, the results are almost invisible. You might meditate for 5 minutes a day and feel no difference. You might practice gratitude and still find yourself overwhelmed. You might replace negative thoughts with positive ones and still doubt yourself. But give it time and the compound effect begins to show. Small wins accumulate into bigger victories. The once foreign habits become your new normal. And what started as effort turns into identity. That is when you realize the true power of training. Wishful thinking, on the other hand, creates frustration. It tricks you into believing that change is possible without effort. You tell yourself, one day I'll have more confidence, or one day I'll be more disciplined. But without daily training, that day never arrives. Wishing makes you wait, while training makes you act. And in the span of 30 days, action will take you further than years of waiting. The people who achieve the most in life are not those who wish the hardest, but those who practice the longest. They build routines, they stick to them, and they train their minds as consistently as they train their bodies. Over time, their mindset becomes their greatest advantage. Every setback is an opportunity, every challenge a lesson, every day a chance to grow stronger. And all of it is possible because they committed to daily training, not empty wishing. Growth comes from competing with yesterday's version of yourself, not with others. This principle may sound simple, but it is one of the hardest to live by in a world that constantly compares us. From the moment we wake up, we are surrounded by signals urging us to measure our worth against someone else's success. The friend who got promoted, the entrepreneur who built a business, the athlete who broke a record, the influencer who appears to live a flawless life. Comparison has become a default behavior, and yet it is the fastest way to sabotage progress. Because no matter how much you accomplish, there will always be someone ahead of you in some way. But the real question is not how you measure against them. The real question is how you measure against yourself yesterday. Think of life as a long marathon. If you run while looking sideways at everyone else, you will eventually trip and fall. The only way to keep moving forward is to focus on your own pace, your own stride, and your own progress. Competing with others can give you short bursts of motivation, but it rarely sustains growth. Growth is sustainable only when it is internal, when it comes from striving to be better than the person you were the day before. The power of self-competition is that it keeps you grounded in reality. Yesterday, maybe you procrastinated for hours. Today, if you managed to focus for 1 extra hour, you've won. Yesterday, perhaps you avoided a difficult conversation. Today, if you step up and speak your truth, you've won. Yesterday, maybe you doubted yourself. Today, if you act in spite of that doubt, you've won. The game is not about beating someone else's timeline or achievements. The game is about building a steady streak of victories over your past self, no matter how small those victories seem. When you start living by this principle, progress becomes measurable and deeply personal. You no longer judge yourself by external standards that constantly shift. Instead, you create a scoreboard that only you control. That scoreboard says, did I grow from yesterday? Did I take even a small step forward? And if the answer is yes, you are already winning. This mindset reduces unnecessary pressure and replaces it with clarity. You understand that your only real competition is the version of you that lived yesterday with their habits, their fears, and their excuses. Self-competition also allows you to honor your unique path. Everyone has different starting points, different circumstances, and different challenges. If you compare your beginning to someone else's middle, you will always feel behind. But if you compare today's effort to yesterday's, you create a level playing field where growth is achievable. This approach cultivates patience because you no longer expect overnight transformation. Instead, you value incremental progress. One day of improvement becomes 2, then 3, and soon you are unrecognizable from the person you once were, not because you beat others, but because you surpassed yourself. There is also a psychological freedom in competing with yourself. The moment you stop obsessing over what others are doing, you release yourself from the endless cycle of insecurity and envy. You begin to channel that energy inward, focusing on actions within your control. This shift builds confidence, because confidence doesn't come from proving you are better than others. It comes from proving you are better than you used to be. Each day becomes an opportunity to validate your own growth, and that validation is far more lasting than external applause. Imagine the compounding effect of this mindset over 30 days. On the first day, you may feel stuck, burdened by old habits and fears. But each day you push just a little further, adding one more disciplined choice, one more brave step, one more moment of resilience. After a month, you're not comparing yourself to strangers on social media. You're comparing yourself to the person who lived 30 days ago. And the difference is undeniable. That older version of you hesitated more, settled more, complained more. This new version of you acts more, grows more, believes more. That transformation is real, measurable, and deeply personal. Growth in its purest form, is not about crossing someone else's finish line. It's about setting a personal record every single day. The standard you chase is your own potential, not someone else's highlight reel. You become addicted not to recognition, but to progress. And progress, when measured against yourself, is the most powerful fuel you can ever harness. Small, disciplined actions performed consistently rewire beliefs and identity. At first glance, this idea might seem too simple to create transformation, but simplicity is its greatest strength. The human brain is designed to adapt to patterns. Whatever you repeat often enough becomes a signal to your brain about who you are. When you tell yourself, "I'm not disciplined," but every day you wake up and complete a small disciplined task, your actions begin to contradict your old belief. Over time, your brain trusts your actions more than your excuses, and slowly your identity begins to shift. You no longer see yourself as someone trying to be disciplined. You begin to see yourself as a disciplined person. Consider how habits are formed. A habit is not created overnight, nor is it destroyed by one bad day. It is built through repetition. When you perform an action consistently, your brain forms neural pathways that make it easier to repeat the behavior the next time. This is why small actions matter so much. Waking up 15 minutes earlier, making your bed, drinking water before coffee, or writing down your priorities for the day may feel insignificant, but each is a micro signal telling your brain, "I am in control, I follow through. I am the kind of person who honors commitments." Those small signals add up until they reshape your belief system. It's easy to dismiss small actions because we often crave dramatic change. We want to go from unfit to athletic, from disorganized to productive, from doubtful to confident in a matter of days. When we don't see instant results, we get frustrated and stop. But what we fail to recognize is that identity doesn't change in leaps. It changes in layers. Every disciplined action is a layer added to your identity, reinforcing the story you tell yourself about who you are. When repeated consistently, those layers become so strong that old beliefs can no longer hold power over you. For example, someone who believes they are not a morning person might commit to waking up 10 minutes earlier than usual for 30 days. On the first few days, it feels painful and the old belief fights back. "See, this isn't for you." But by the 10th day, something begins to shift. The body adapts, the mind adjusts, and the old belief starts to weaken. By the 30th day, the person no longer identifies as someone who can't wake up early. Their consistent action has rewritten the narrative. That identity shift doesn't happen because of a single bold act. It happens because of small, disciplined acts compounded over time. Another powerful example is with confidence. Many people believe they are not confident, but confidence is not an innate trait. It is a result of repeated courageous actions. If every day you practice speaking up in small ways, sharing an idea in a meeting, asking a question in class, or striking up a conversation, you start to reprogram your brain. Each small act of courage chips away at the belief that you are shy or insecure. Eventually, those daily repetitions redefine your identity. You no longer have to convince yourself that you are confident. You embody it because your actions prove it. Consistency is the glue that makes this process work. Doing something once or twice doesn't change identity. It only creates a momentary experience. But when an action becomes a ritual, your brain absorbs it as part of who you are. That is why discipline is so important. Discipline is not about punishing yourself. It is about creating a reliable system where actions align with the identity you want to build. The more consistently you act, the stronger the identity becomes. It's worth noting that small actions don't have to be glamorous. They rarely are. Most of the work of rewiring beliefs happens in quiet, ordinary moments. Choosing to finish a task instead of leaving it incomplete, choosing to go for a short walk instead of skipping exercise altogether, choosing to read a few pages instead of scrolling endlessly. These small choices accumulate and eventually become undeniable evidence. That evidence builds confidence and reshapes your self-image more effectively than any external validation ever could. In the span of 30 days, this process becomes visible. At the start, the actions feel forced and the old beliefs feel louder. But by the middle of the journey, you start to feel the tension ease. The actions don't feel as heavy and the new identity starts to feel believable. By the end of 30 days, you realize the shift has already occurred, not because you declared it, but because you proved it to yourself. The old identity was only as strong as the lack of evidence against it, and once the evidence piled up through daily, disciplined actions, the old story collapsed. This is the secret to long-term transformation. You don't become who you want to be by imagining it or waiting for motivation. You become that person by acting in alignment with the identity you desire, consistently in small ways. Over time, your beliefs catch up to your actions, and your identity evolves into something stronger, more disciplined, and more empowering than you ever thought possible. Resilience comes from viewing setbacks as stepping stones, not barriers. This truth is one of the most transformative shifts you can make in your thinking because setbacks are inevitable. No one goes through life without facing rejection, failure, or disappointment. What separates those who succeed from those who stop halfway is not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to reinterpret difficulty. The very moment you begin to see a setback not as the end of the road, but as a redirection, you unlock resilience. Resilience is not about avoiding pain. It is about using pain to propel you forward. Every time you encounter a setback, you are given two choices. One choice is to let it define you. This is the path of discouragement. where you take failure as proof that you are not capable or that your goal is impossible. The second choice is to let it refine you. This is the path of resilience, where you treat every difficulty as a lesson, every mistake as feedback, and every rejection as redirection. The setback itself doesn't decide your future. Your interpretation of it does. Think about a child learning to walk. The child stumbles hundreds of times before taking steady steps. Yet not once does the child conclude, maybe walking isn't for me. Instead, the child uses each fall as information, adjusting balance, shifting weight, and trying again. That is resilience in its purest form. Somewhere along the way, as adults, we forget this instinct and start interpreting stumbles as signs to quit. But if you return to that childlike perspective, you realize setbacks are nothing more than stepping stones. They are the data points that guide you toward mastery. Resilient people build this mindset by constantly asking, what can I learn from this? Instead of focusing on what went wrong, they focus on what can be improved. They understand that failure is not a judgment on their worth. It is simply part of the process. For example, if you prepare for an exam and fail, it is not evidence that you are unintelligent. It is evidence that your preparation strategy needs adjustment. If you start a business and face losses, it is not proof that you are unfit for entrepreneurship. It is proof that your model or timing needs refinement. When you adopt this perspective, setbacks stop being barriers. They become tools, resources that shape you into someone more capable than before. Another critical element of resilience is the ability to regulate emotions in the face of setbacks. It is natural to feel disappointment, anger, or sadness when things don't go as planned. Resilient individuals don't deny these emotions. They acknowledge them, but refuse to stay stuck in them. They give themselves permission to feel, but then they move forward with the lessons. This balance between emotional honesty and forward motion is what keeps them from being paralyzed by failure. Resilience also grows stronger with repetition. The first setback might feel overwhelming, but the more you face and overcome challenges, the more confident you become in your ability to rise again. Each recovery builds a memory bank of strength. When you remember how many times you've bounced back before, you start to trust that you can bounce back again. Over time, setbacks lose their power to intimidate you because you've proven to yourself that you can survive them. It is also important to understand that resilience does not mean ignoring pain or pretending difficulties don't exist. It means integrating the lessons of those difficulties into your growth. If you avoid pain, you avoid progress, because progress almost always requires stretching beyond comfort. Resilient people don't seek pain, but they also don't run from it. They lean into it, knowing that every challenge carries the potential for transformation. In practical terms, resilience can be trained through reflection. Whenever you encounter a setback, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. What happened? What can I learn from it? How will I apply that lesson moving forward? This simple process transforms what could have been a wall into a stepping stone. It ensures that failure is never final. It is always formative. In a 30-day journey to build a winning mindset, resilience plays a central role because challenges will come quickly. You might miss a day of discipline, you might revert to an old habit, or you might feel the urge to quit. Without resilience, these moments can derail your entire progress. But with resilience, each setback becomes part of the process. Missing one day doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. What matters is what you do the next day. Resilience gives you the strength to start again, to continue the journey, and to turn short-term failure into long-term growth. Ultimately, resilience is not about bouncing back to where you were before. It is about bouncing forward to a place of greater strength. Each setback equips you with wisdom, patience, and grit. By seeing them as stepping stones, you transform every obstacle into an opportunity to evolve. Over time, this way of thinking becomes your default, and you stop fearing challenges. Instead, you welcome them as the very things that shape the strongest version of yourself. Consistency over 30 days transforms temporary effort into lasting character. This principle is what separates those who merely attempt change from those who actually become transformed by it. Many people start strong, filled with motivation and energy, but within a few days they slow down and eventually they stop. The reason is that they treat change as a sprint rather than a process. They believe one burst of energy will carry them through. But true transformation is not about intensity alone. It is about consistency. The daily effort, even when small, is what rewires your habits, beliefs, and identity until they are no longer temporary actions, but permanent parts of who you are. The human brain thrives on patterns. When you repeat something long enough, your brain begins to automate it, moving it from conscious effort to subconscious behavior. That is how brushing your teeth, tying your shoes, or driving a car became effortless. In the same way, when you practice discipline, gratitude, resilience, or focus every single day for 30 days, you are training your brain to accept these behaviors as natural. At first, they feel heavy and awkward, but repetition smooths the rough edges until they flow seamlessly. That shift is where character is formed. Consider the difference between someone who does something once and someone who does it every day for a month. The person who tries once may feel a momentary burst of pride, but it fades quickly. The person who commits daily builds evidence of who they are. Each day adds another layer of proof that they are disciplined, committed, and capable. By the end of 30 days, the evidence is undeniable. They don't have to convince themselves that they are strong. They have lived it repeatedly until it became part of their character. The key is not perfection, but persistence. Consistency doesn't mean you never stumble. It means you never stop showing up. Some days you may give 100%, other days only 40%. But the act of showing up day after day is what compounds over time. The days you thought were weak actually become the strongest proof of your character. Anyone can act disciplined when they feel motivated, but true growth comes from acting disciplined when they don't. That is the essence of consistency. It proves that your actions are stronger than your emotions. 30 days may seem short, but it is long enough to create momentum. Think of it as planting seeds. Each day you water them with small, consistent actions, reading a few pages, exercising for 20 minutes, journaling your thoughts, practicing gratitude. On the first few days, the soil looks unchanged, and you might be tempted to think nothing is happening. But underground, roots are forming. By the second week, small sprouts appear. By the fourth week, growth is visible, undeniable. What started as temporary effort has become a living process, something that continues to grow because consistency gave it time to take root. Another powerful aspect of 30 days of consistency is the way it reshapes self-image. Many people live with limiting belief. I'm not disciplined. I can't stick to things, or I always quit halfway. Each time they quit, those beliefs grow stronger. But when you commit to 30 days of consistent action, you gather evidence against those limiting beliefs. Every completed day becomes proof that the old story is no longer true. By the end of the month, you begin to see yourself differently. You no longer identify as someone who quits. You identify as someone who follows through. That identity shift is permanent because it is backed by lived experience, not wishful thinking. Consistency also builds trust within yourself. Often, people struggle not because they lack ability, but because they don't trust their own word. They set goals but fail to follow through, and each broken promise erodes self-confidence. 30 days of consistency rebuilds that trust. You tell yourself, I will do this, and then you do it again and again. That reliability becomes part of your character, and you start to believe in your own strength. When you trust yourself, you unlock courage because you know that no matter the challenge, you will show up. Most importantly, consistency turns effort into lifestyle. Temporary effort always depends on motivation, but lifestyle runs on habit. When you have shown up every day for 30 days, the need for motivation fades because the action has become part of your routine. You don't debate whether you will do it. You simply do it because it feels natural. That is how character is formed. Character is not built on grand declarations or occasional effort. It is built on the small, consistent actions that shape how you live every single day. By the end of 30 days, consistency will have transformed not just your habits, but your identity. What was once difficult becomes normal. What once required effort becomes effortless. And what once felt like temporary discipline becomes lasting character. This is the power of consistency. It bridges the gap between who you are now and who you are capable of becoming one day at a time. At the end of these 30 days, what you walk away with is more than a set of habits. It is a new way of seeing yourself. You began with the idea that mindset could be trained like a muscle, and through discipline, resilience, and consistency, you proved it to yourself. You learned that growth does not come from measuring against others, but from surpassing yesterday's version of you. You discovered that small, steady actions have the power to rewrite your identity, that setbacks are not the end, but the lessons that move you forward, and that true transformation comes from showing up day after day until effort becomes character. A winning mindset is not built on grand gestures, nor does it belong to the few who were born with it. It belongs to anyone willing to put in the work that is often quiet, repetitive, and unseen by others. And yet it is this quiet work that creates the loudest results. The person you are 30 days from now is already waiting inside you, ready to emerge. All it takes is the decision to train your mind with intention and the courage to stay consistent. The question you must now ask yourself is simple. Will you wait for change to happen someday? Or will you commit to building the mindset that ensures it starts today? The choice is yours, and the next 30 days could be the most defining days of your life.